And you were also director of the Minerals Council of Australia. What were your responsibilities in this position?
Minerals Council is interesting. It's an industry lobby and representative body. At the time I was there were 19 of Australia's largest mining companies were members. It didn't cater for the junior end of the industry. There were other organisations in Australia doing that. This was Big End of Town's lobby group as Newmont chief executive, and it was an organisation where only chief executives of mining companies could be Minerals Council delegates, and the argument being if the Minerals Council was to be effective, they didn't want the delegates to have to run back to corporate office and find out if this or that could be approved or agreed. They wanted the CEOs around the table. In that respect, it was a really powerful organisation. When you came out of one of those meetings, you knew that the mining industry, the big end of town anyway, had made a collective decision made by all the CEOs of the 19 companies. My particular role was I chaired the Community and Environmental Committee. Because one of the things that I had learned during the development of both of the Indonesian projects is that you can do your economic feasibility study, you can do your environmental baseline study and your environmental impact, but the one thing that was rapidly becoming a critical component of any new mining development was understanding what the social impact of the new mine development would be. It was quite interesting. When we were doing the environmental impact of Batu Hijau, the very first meeting we had with the Indonesian government's environmental office was with a guy who ultimately chaired the global mining initiative around the turn of the millennium. And he said, when are you guys going to do your social impact survey? And we said, social impact survey? He said, yes. He said, you might not think that you need to do a social impact survey, but Indonesia is such a densely populated community, and even though there aren't that many people, nobody living at the mine site, nobody within cooey of it, your operation will have...
those pig hunters.
Yeah, exactly, pig hunters, yeah. Your operation will have an impact on communities in the vicinity around the mine site. Nowadays, it's called the social licence to operate. Okay. But in the mid-90s, it was a peculiarly Indonesian concept. Their argument was, yeah, we need to know what the impact's going to be on the birds and the bees and the bugs and bunnies and the physical environment, but we're far more interested to know what the impact's going to be on the social environment. So Newmont did one of the first in the world social environmental studies in the context of doing the environmental impact around Batu Hijau. By the time I got to Australia in 2002, and the Global Mining Initiative had just delivered its conclusions, it was clear that for mining companies to operate in the third world, and especially in the remote third world, if they didn't have a social impact plan and didn't understand the concept of social licence to operate, then they better get a wriggle on, because that was going to be just as much a part of whether or not the community around the mine site would approve you being there. And so that was very much part of what the Minerals Council of Australia was doing, and I ran that subcommittee for them.
And then I guess subsequently, across this side of the Tasman, you were chairman of another resources lobby group in New Zealand called Straterra.
Yes.
How was that experience?
Well, I was involved in setting up Straterra. When I came back to live in New Zealand, I was involved with the OSIMM here, which was another global membership group, but very much an Australasian lobbyist and activist group for professionals in the mineral industry in Australia and New Zealand. What was obvious at the time in New Zealand was the industry had no effective voice. There were a couple of small groups that represented some of the miners here, but there was no coordination, there was no strategy, they had no political clout. And so a number of us got together and said, if the mining industry in New Zealand is to have any real impact in a country in which most people only want to stop it. They needed to get a lot better at communicating the messages of mining. They needed to get better in developing their own research, developing credibility with government and other things like that. And so the guy who was the chief executive of Solid Energy, the state coal company, and I got together with a group of other industry leaders and said, what we need is a voice here that we currently don't have. Eventually we developed what came to be called Straterra, and I was the inaugural chairman of it. And it's grown, I should say, to the point now where it has more than 50 corporate members. Nearly everybody who's doing anything in the mining sector, consultants, the major mining companies, lawyers, accountants, suppliers, anyone who's anybody in the industry are members of Straterra. It has 5 or 6 full-time paid staff, and they are very much the voice of the mining industry in New Zealand now.